So I became a member of the Jean-Marie College Warden. I became 1 year the history officer. There was the secretary. I did not understand a lot of words that were said in the meetings. I would go home, replay the meeting in my head, write down the minutes, have them corrected by the manager. And after I became secretary of the Friends of the National Historic Site, and chairman for many years was the retired executive secretary and chairman of this college. She corrected every single word that I wrote down, and I learned how to speak, and I learned how to write, and to the point where I can run a discussion panel. So the object is to define the community as a community, or be a community. So I wrote a few notes, historical notes. Number one, let's define the word community. And this isn't an interactive. The minute you want, I say something you not agree, just talk. Even this should be round chairs, but we want me not being alone. You are part of this panel, or are the Francophone community. My idea is yes. What's a community? It's a group of people that are together that feels good being together. And are we defined on an ethnic ground or linguistic ground? In my mind, we're defined on a linguistic ground. Okay. Now, historical facts. There's a few points that are known. There's nothing big in this. So, what represents Francophone in the area? Well, we know that Jean-Marie visited the area in 1662. That's Jean-Nicolet camped in the area in 1634. That is Jesuit, is good, and Charles Rimbaud came here to preach the Jesuits. That on June 4th, 1671, Simon François Beaumont, Sieur de Luçon, took possession of the area land in the name of Louis XIV. In 1750, Louis de Bonne and Louis Garda, Sieur de Rapantini, are given a seigneurie from Louis XV. They invite Jean-Baptiste Cadet to farm in the area. Fort Savage Creek, that's across the river. The Norfolk Company exploits our trading post as of 1790. The company is bought by Hudson Bay Company in 1821. That's would that be for Fort Repentigny. That would have been roughly where the fishermen was in that area. Charles Oak Cemetery started building his own house in roughly 1811. It is completed in 1814. It is a home and a trading place, an important trading place on this side of the river. Francis H. Kirk starts getting interested in the area as of roughly around 1894. He would industrialize the surrounding. This is very, very important. We'll come back to it in the creating of a community. The St. Ignace Parish is founded in 1902. The St. Croix Parish would be founded in 1965. Actually, met the priest that founded that particular church. It was a church in my hometown. The last mass of the St. Ignace Parish was on September 8, 1999. The St. Ignace School was founded in 1902. The summer.
Don't tap the table.
Oh, the Sambalaga Fund was founded in 1979. And one lot, very importantly, a study was prepared by the Yale firm in 1989 on the subject of the sans scolaire communautaire, and then the linguistic crisis happened in 1990. That was very interesting. So, and well, I'll come back on all those points. I was asked about Frenchtown. It was a place called an area in the city that was called Frenchtown. That's not too far from here to the west. That would have been close to Algoma still. I was told by the meeting, that's our area. If you're on a linguistic basis, where people speak French in around the area, well, there's a reason why the Saint Ignace Church were found in the area, because people were there. Why were there a concentration of people? If you have the industries founded by my translation, let's see, the steel mill and the paper mill founded, you have people that need to walk to work. I was thinking about in 2004, we just bought a new truck. The truck down here, I can press the button, the truck will start. Like in 1902, you need to walk to work. Okay, the car was starting to get around, that was cutting edge technology, what they started in the winter that we have, I'm not sure. So logic to have a concentration of people of the same linguistic origin and the same linguistic appartenance, belonging, in an area close to a workplace. And then people would have been gathered around one church that would become a fellowship that will, you have a lot of help to survive and to live. Okay, so that's what we logical saying. Yes, there were Frenchtown. Yes, there were people of the same linguistic need and origin and speaking in that area. Now, what's right? My premise is that the community is a blue-collar community. There's 2 years. You had a few professionals, me, Kristen, and a lot of us in the room. We came here because of a need to have teachers in both elementary, high school area, near the city area, health, whatnot. But we, compared to the mass of employment, we were white collars. We were few, not overwhelming part of the community, but we still were. And but the community as a whole is blue collar. What do blue collar people do? Well, you get up in the morning, you go to work, you work physically, you come back. When I was preparing this, I was thinking constantly about Tony Tremblay. Tony Tremblay, when he came here, was a very renowned Francophone. While Tony came from a very poor background, he had different business. He came from the Abitibi, from Rimouski. He stayed in Echo Bay. He walked from Echo Bay to the steel mill every day and back until he made enough money to bring his family down here. That's where I came to work 50 feet, come back. And got a problem walking across the street. My legs don't want to let me do it. But we're got to 2024. In his days, that was a big deal. Those industries would attract people with skills, people that would work in the industry, and people that would create that strong community around the churches and around the workplaces. And the workplaces were, like I say, were wood industries, paper mill, and steel making. That was the thing around here. And you would have people, all of that would become a farmer. You need to supply food to the people that work in those industries. And break down a little bit, and for that, when I came here in 1989, the community was pretty much spread out. And not like in Sudbury, where you were, a lot of the Francophone were around the flour mill area, some in New Sudbury. And lots of the community would have been around the small surrounding towns. We have a few surrounding towns, but mostly our city is alongside the rivers. It's very, very, very different. Subject, when I read my paper, were we affected by the English-only resolution? It did hurt. Okay, I remember Mr. Fertuzzi, that was when that thing happened. That was my first time teaching French psychology. He was one of my students. him and Ryan Hayes, and it was interesting. I taught him. He took a lot of space in class. But at the same time, I became friends with Mr. Ryan Hayes, and a ton of respect for the people around those characters at that era. How they deserved. What we know that when we're talking about French criminal, it never happened because the people that were pushing it got hurt by all the debate around the resolution, and they moved out. But we stayed, and people that go over here stayed, and we continued living and developing the community. We continued going to our churches. We continue being who we were among in the community. Me and Kristen, we became reenactor for 1812 for St. Joseph, for the emergency house. We have our accents. We do not shy away. We are francophone around English institution, but we're still going back to the French community. We never leave the French community because that's where we feel ultimately comfortable being around. We go to First Baptist Church, but I still am nice at Columbus. I never relented my Catholic heritage, just life bar somewhere else. Okay, but we're still amongst English population, and that's a lot of us. We're still francophone that live, but likes to every once in a while to gather together and feel that closeness and that commonality of language and of culture, even though life brings us somewhere else in our daily endeavors. So that's that's the attraction of the community. Okay, but and did it hurt? Yes. Did we survive? Let's try. Yes, we're here today. That's my premise. Now, we'll handle the discussion. I said law. So, what the question is, how do you feel about the community? Also, your experience in that community. How do you feel that? How strong in that community? How do you feel that you're integrated in that community? I saw friends leaving a couple for me. I see a lot of immigrants coming to the school and taking courses at CEPA and speaking French. For me, the community, I see a community that's developing that's dynamic. How do you feel? Your turn to talk.
Jean-Marie, you're saying about community.
Yeah.
So we had St. Ignace. We came to St. Marie. Yeah. We moved here in 1976. We were all married there. My brother had confirmation there. It was a community there. We had events in the basement. My parents were friends with a lot of the people there. And then when that went, it sort of broke up. Yeah. People went to all kinds of different churches and things like that. You need a central focus to gather people together. Something that people want to do. Of all ages. Like low cost, but still very interesting. And I think that's the point, to draw people to come. And we always complain about people, you do all this stuff and nobody comes, right? So you got to get something to attract the people and pull them in.
But there is the other parish, St. Clair. However, not everybody came to this parish, though. But, it's not like...
Because the people at St. Ignace were hurt, too.
Yes, that's right.
It's not the fault of the Francophone that what happened to St.
No. But we're talking about forming a community. So that was a central for that group. So that's what we have to try to do, is get a focal point.
But just find out what will
keep on developing the
That's the challenge.
Are we a community right now? Maybe that's the question.
Well, you said we live as French people. We have lots of French friends. We do our thing. Everybody knows we're French. Better not say anything about it. So we're a community.
It happened. To be honest, it's happened for us a few times where it bothered people that me and Kristen will speak French together. One way to speak as a couple among the English, and we were told not to do it, and we were.
How many people here are native Sault Ste. Marians?
There.
Okay. Okay. Were you born and raised in the French community? Okay. So there's a couple of us here, because I was born here in 1949 into a French Canadian family, and I did all my grade school at CNS. Unfortunately, there was no French high school, so I had to go to Cornwall, Ontario to do my high school. Okay, and then I came back to the Soo, taught in the French schools, and have been active in the French community my entire life. But not only active in the French community, I was born into a French Canadian family, so it was part of the essence of who I was. Okay, and I can honestly say that I have not felt, there was only one time during my entire life that I was told directly, you French Canadians should not be here. Okay? Only once.
Jean-Marie too, go back to the Quebec.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that was from somebody I knew very, very well. It wasn't a stranger, or somebody I knew very well that I'd known for years. Okay? And definitely, when we had the linguistic situation, okay, I had members of my French Canadian family sign the petition for sacred. Okay, so I knew what was happening there. Okay,
That was probably even more hurtful, that.
well, it
Members
was,
of your own.
to me, it wasn't a clear understanding of what the petition was really about.
Yeah.
Okay? And they didn't get a sense of how much that impacted the feeling of being French Canadian in Sault Ste. Marie. Okay? And I know that some of my relatives, even the term Francophone, they said, no, we're not Francophone. We are French Canadian. And they would never accept the term Francophone. Okay? And it did hurt when that resolution came out. Okay?
Yes, very much.
Okay, and it did anger, okay, and I think at first I also didn't really understand what it was all about, okay, but as we got more and more into it, it became to me a black mark on Sault Ste. Marie.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and not only was I feeling bad for being French Canadian, I was feeling bad for being citizen of Sault Ste. Marie. Okay. And I think that over time, that anger, that frustration, that hurt has dissipated. And even I could say that in some ways, because of the resolution, there are certain things about the French community that have become stronger. Okay? So that there is a silver lining with it. Okay? Not that I would ask that we repeat anything like that, but that in it happening, we were able to, as Jean-Marie said, we're here, we're surviving, we're continuing, and we're growing. Okay? And I think that the attitude I have adopted over the years is somewhat let bygones be bygones, but keep them in your memory should anything else come forward. You know? And I really, also what hit me during that time was the Anglophone community that was supporting the French community. Okay? It was not French against English at all. Okay? There were many people within Sault Ste. Marie and the Anglophone community who didn't speak French at all that saw the true nature of that resolution and were supporting the French community. And a lot of those people, some of them, excuse me, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them I knew personally, and I truly appreciated, their attitude towards it. Okay, and I had
One business we can tell the water tower.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, water tower.
But I also had good friends who were on the sailor side, so there was all that. But overall, at this point in time, to me, like I said, it's bygones. And that's where I think.
There was a lot of misinformation and disinformation that was distributed at that time, and that's where a lot of the signatures came from.
Because I'll tell you, my relatives signed that based upon economic reasons, not linguistic reasons, economic reasons.
that were based on falsehoods. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Thought we were hurt when 5 years after that she had the Quebec referendum for a mom. We told her she was voting yes for the referendum. And now the same reaction that she realized how much it will hurt her daughter, that we were both in the midst of a career, teaching career over there. And we were not about to move back to Quebec province. Well, not from Quebec province, you are. So, and that hurt, so she had that language resolution, all those things, and we did those feelings. And finally the biting feelings, like, wow. You just open your mind that was her extent, and it was her only daughter. And that's,
Not only me,
And how was it for the educators, the principals and so forth? How was it for them?
During that time, it was really, really very difficult. There was no doubt about it. Because when this happened, of course, there was a group of French Canadians got together and we opposed the resolution, and just about everybody, the entire community joined in. And that's when we saw strength in the community.
Yeah.
Now, what it meant to us, I lost a third of my teachers. A third of the community, the French community left. And you couldn't hire anybody in.
Nobody wanted to come here, so it was hard to find teachers.
It was not an easy. So if you could speak French and chew gum at the same time, you were hired. It was almost like
Why
that.
did they leave? Did they feel they had to, either they were married with Anglophones and needed to side with them, or what was their reason?
The reason for living was that people felt very uncomfortable living in the community. For a period of several months, there were a lot of attacks on the Francophone community. You walk down the street. You walk down the street, and if you were speaking in French, then you would get insults.
You get people would threaten your kids.
Yeah.
We
Stuff
had
like that.
some of us who were leaders in the community, and we had that happen with our children, and I can name other people, I can name specifically. Carl Morenstrom, there's a reason he left the community. There was another couple too, Solange and Michel Fortin. We received death threats for our children. Now in these we've written letters that were sent to our homes that named the children, named the school that they went to. So these were not just idle, anonymous death threats. They named the children, they named the school that they went to. When we went anywhere in the evening, we lived in the country. We were pretty far in the country. Sometimes we'd find garbage dumped on our driveway, and I'm thinking, we drive all the way out here to do that. But if we were going anywhere, we had 3 children. Our neighbors had 2 very guardian-type dogs who thought our house and our kids were part of their family. So if we went anywhere, we would let our neighbors know. The dogs would come over and sit with their kids who were old enough to be home on their own, but they would come and they would sit with the kids just in case anything happened. Of course, they always knew where we were and how to reach us. But yeah, it was not a fun period. And we talked about many things in those days, and everybody was, well, we've got to keep this hush, 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 hush. Finally, one day I said, okay, that's enough. That's enough. The city of Sault Ste. Marie, the people in the city of Sault Ste. Marie need to know what's going on here. And so we talked to a reporter for the Sault Star, who at that time was doing a lot of write-ups about what was going on in the situation in Sault. And he put it into the paper that there were children in these Francophone families who were being threatened. And all of a sudden, a lot of things, this was about 6 months after the resolution was passed. And all of a sudden, there was a lot of stuff that stopped, and the Anglophones started to come out of the woodwork and say, what is happening to our community? Who are we? Who are we becoming? And that's when the tide turned.
Yeah, it was very divisive.
There were
particular time.
There were a lot of
What's that?
proposing.
I remember going to the restaurant, the Pagoda, my husband and I, another couple, and we arrived at the same time as another couple. They were sitting, but they weren't part of our group. They were sitting at a table next to us, and we were the 4 of us, all Francophone. So we were speaking in French, and then the owner came to us and he said, just so you know, they are asking that I ask you to speak English.
Oh, boy.
Oh, you believe that? And he said, but I'm not going to do that. He said, I come from China or whatever. And he was Asian, and he said, you know, I would never, but we couldn't believe it. So they left. But can you believe it? They weren't part of our party, you know, because we would have spoken in English if they were. But here, they wanted him to tell us we had to speak English, you know, amongst ourselves. Eh?
You see, that's what happens when a group says, you know, slaps another group in the face, basically, and that's how we felt about it. It permits all the others to come out of the woodwork and to be vocal.
Gives them permission.
It gives them permission, that's the thing, because everybody knows, no, it's not appropriate to do things like that. But because the city had said, Francophones were not, and you know, basically it's a slap in the face, then everybody could do it.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
That's it. If it starts from the leadership,
Yes.
I'd say with the mayor and everything like that, of course, they gives permission. Eh?
Yeah, and what Denise said is that when people decided at that point that the Anglophone said, what's the city coming to? And started being vocal about that, the other vocals decreased, and the honest people, the people that were just and were tolerant and wanted the French, they spoke up more, the others disappeared, and it became, that is what the city is now.
Yeah.
It's a much more open city, I think, and the then I wouldn't want to go back to, the now is much better. And proof is right there.
And he the lawyer, I know, I can't think of his first name. Yeah, he did a lot as well to fight this, eh? Like legally, eh? Like through the legal system, eh? He did a lot as well, eh? To help the situation.
The other thing that was happening, like we're talking about over a period of about 6 months after the resolution, not tonight, we haven't talked about what happened before the resolution or what led up to it. But in this 6 month period, one of the things that happened during that 6 month period is that the RCMP was doing investigations. And there were suspicions, I don't think they were ever able to prove it, so it never actually came out. It was CBC had a program in those days called The Journal, and they did investigative reporting. And they had been in touch with us a fair bit as well. So it was not something that could come out because it wasn't provable yet, but there was a lot of investigating that was going on. Sapler was related to APEC. APEC, it was said, and it was being investigated by the RCMP, had a link with the KKK at the time. So, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on. So they kind of disappeared at the same time as the people of Sault Ste. Marie were starting to stand up and say, hey, no, this is not who we are.
I forgot when Christine brought it up. We had our house aid, and we had to get service master to come clean it up.
Oh, yeah.
My husband was not happy.
Yeah, master. How do you think you can remove master
On white side. On white side.
So what did you have? I'm sorry.
Mustard.
Eggs. You threw eggs.
Mustard, we have mustard
On white side.
on the siding.
So did we skip over your presentation?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Graydon, Dr. Graydon. I teach in the Department of Sociology at the University. I'm going to say I flew from Naples last night because I thought I'd never ever get to say that. But only to say that for me it's 2 in the morning and and in Naples it's 25 and there's pastries falling from the sky. So the reason
Welcome.
yeah, I was at Tim Hortons with like. So the reason I did the research, I guess about 8 or 9 years ago, and it was published in a journal out of the University of Marquette. Or University of Michigan, Marquette. No, Marquette University. It was published in a journal, I believe it's called African Peninsula. And basically, as a member of the queer community, it's like, oh, told to fuck off by your community. I know what that's like. So I had a lot of resonance with, you know, your city saying, you don't matter, you don't count. And I thought, this is interesting. But when I looked at the accounts, because this is all part of a very nasty 30 years of anti-Quebec, anti-French sentiment, particularly in Ontario, but nationwide, driven by APEC. And the Sioux was kind of one of the actors in this. But when you look at the accounts, the Sioux virtually never mentioned. So this was a big deal in the Sioux, but in the other accounts, it doesn't get mentioned much at all, which I found kind of interesting. But the Sioux, the resolution, there was a similar one in Niagara Falls, a similar one in Thunder Bay. The Sioux one got a lot of attention, but it didn't resonate very broadly. So basically that meant nobody ever looked at it. So as a researcher, you're always like, what has nobody looked at? So when you go to the library and find out somebody has done that, you're like, damn, damn. So that's why I got involved in it. And I basically wanted to find out what happened, but also what did that feel like for the community to say no. But Fertizi, is Joe Fertizi still alive?
Yes.
You can be a libel lawyer. So Joe Fertizi is an early, not a Donald Trump. He's nowhere near as nasty and dangerous as Trump, but he's cut from the same cloth. The dog whistle populist politician, going for the lowest common denominator in politics. He was driven by outside forces, absolutely. There's not a lot of evidence he initiated this on his own, but there were a lot of influences around him that drove this. Now, he claimed that his main impetus was economics. This would cost the city a lot of money. That was never true. But that was Apex, Sapler's tactic. None of this was ever true. They just ran these things, and that's what Donald Trump is doing. So we've seen this before, but this is pre-internet, pre-cell phone, so you had to get letters rather than your children. Now it would happen in seconds.
Yeah, that's true, that's right.
So you need to think of this as the culmination of outside forces. Now for the Francophone community, and I myself don't speak French, I've tried many times without success. So my colleague, Dr. Celia Ross, who is president of the university, but also Francophone teacher, paired up with her and one of my students, Jean Luto, to basically help with this, to find contacts. Yvonne was one, and others. And we did interviews. We did a wonderful interview with a fellow who was a blogger. I think he was in his 80s. He was brought over in the 50s as there's been a forest fire and all the trees had to be put into the river. And he shook my hand, and it was like an iron vice. This little old man, I was just like, and he sang us a little story, a lumberjack story, of a lumberjack, a waitress, and a can of maple syrup. That was a lot of fun. That's all. And everyone talked about what it felt like, and it really divided families, and in some ways it divided families in a very common thing you see with oppressed communities or social movements. So the generation pre-Martin Luther King thought that, the rights they accrued were enough. Okay, no, don't ask for any more. So the next generation comes along and says, no, that's not enough. So their parents often say, no, don't make any more trouble. Don't make any more trouble. And the next generation says, no, that's not enough. The next generation comes, right? So after Martin Luther King, we get the Black Panthers. And the next group, the next generation wants more, and the earlier generation feels quite threatened that you're asking for too much. So it divided families in many ways like that. So, Fertizi is an arrogant, nasty piece of work, let's be honest. And he wanted votes. And when he saw the petition with 25,000 signatures, he jumped on the bandwagon. And it was said if they continued petitioning in his neighborhood, he said they'd get another 10,000. But the Italian community was not foursquare behind Fertizi. The Italian Association was not a fan. So it was quite divided, but it was sufficient to get the ball rolling. So APEC is formed in '77 in response to Bill 101 in Quebec, the French Language Rights Act, eliminating French rights. Now in Quebec, Quebec is a cultural nationalistic project. So they have a vision and approach. What you get with Francophone communities outside Quebec is they don't have these nationalists, they have a very regional or local identity. So locally, this was not seen as part of the great fabric of national politics of Quebec. It was a kind of local Francophone identity thing and cultural thing. So they didn't see it tied to national issues. all the press did. They see this as a national, dumpster fire about national politics and French politics. But locally, it was not seen to be a bellwether of what's going on in the province. It was just, or the country, it was just nasty stuff that's going on here. So you've got actors like the people that fund APEC and Jack Andrews, who writes really two very nasty books about francophones, French language conspiracy, bilingual French moral Trudeau's master plan. And then he goes on to write enough French, enough Quebec. And he writes in a very nasty, right-wing threat to kind of almost a race, like the English race. And he kind of makes these arguments that they may be eligible for their services, but they have to pay for them themselves. These are actors that deny the linguistic duality of the country. So they're pretty nasty actors. And ultimately, APEC would be found to have links to neo-Nazis and that they would socialize with them. So they were part of a larger network, which now we're seeing is very much an ascension. And we're, for me as a queer guy, I'm like, oh, that battle we fought is not done. The battle women fought is not done. All these battles we thought were done are not done. So we're coming back to that. So, and this is part of the Reform Party and Don Cherry and all of that. And so when Ontario passes the French Language Act in 1986, I remember when I was going out, Bill Davis mused about bilingual Ontario and he paid the price for that. So the French Services Act is basically going to say that municipalities that had a greater population of 10%, Francophone population, had to provide services, municipal services like translation, council stuff, in French. But below that level, the province would pay for it. Well, APEC and SAPLR said that this was not true, and basically, so what drove this was basically complete lies about money the city would have to pay out, but they would never have to pay this out. But one of the things that was happening was that when this came out, the province had downloaded paying for various environmental measures to the city. The other thing was going on was that some pay equity stuff was coming through, and so that the city would have to start paying more, better sort of gender-based wages. So Patizzi was concerned about those very practical things. So the timing was a kind of a perfect storm. But that the city would have to pay for these things was never true. So what Patizzi does, so what you're seeing in the United States right now is right-wing states, state legislatures are passing laws making it illegal to vote if you're not a citizen. It already is illegal to vote if you're not a citizen. So Patizzi would say things, well, we're just making it clear what's already understood, is that the language of council is English. What's already clear, why do you have to mess with English? So you get these bizarre attempts to basically, it's illegal for me to shoot you, but I'll pass a resolution saying I'm not allowed to shoot you, but it already is illegal. So they do this because it inflames fears that right is under threat. So APEC gets rolling in reaction to Bill 101, and it's a very Ontario situated movement. But then when the Supreme Court rules Bill 101 is unconstitutional, and Quebec uses the notwithstanding clause for the first time, that makes APEC national. Because now there's this feeling that Quebec is threatening, the entire country in terms of linguistic issues, and they're going to kind of drive these various things. But locally, what happened is when in '87, when the separate school board made a policy change, and so basically only children whose mother tongue was French or being educated in French could enroll in the immersion programs. So that would greatly reduce who was able to go
In the French language schools.
in the French language schools. And there were also real concerns from those parents was that the children were in classes where 50% of the students were English speaking. So they would immediately get a kind of simplified version of French in the classroom. So the quality was going down. So there were discussions about their own school, but also about a Francophone Cultural Center and the economic dog whistle was blown, that we had to pay for this, and who are these people? And that was all kind of happening locally, while outside, the city, you've got APEC. So you had, that horrible incident in Gananoque, where people wiped their feet on the fleur-de-lis, on the flag. There's horrible things in Windsor and Niagara Falls and Thunder Bay. And it's part of a really nasty period. And basically, Fertizi runs with it. So in 1989, they run the petition program. They get 25,000 signatures. And what's his name? Kierman, who used to be a military guy, ran it with military precision. And Kierman, he was an old Navy man. And he was in the Navy in the 60s, and his anxiety was that in the Navy, you were promoted only if you had the skill. If you didn't have the skill to do something on the ship, you were not promoted. So he applied this, you might say, this kind of very technical approach to promoting people, that you have to be able to do this. And he was basically concerned about people basically, just because they had the language but not the skill, be given a job. So that made me thinking of, may work in a boat or a submarine. You can't have that job because if you can't do that, you're going to sink. But there isn't the same sort of high stakes issues if you're just working a municipal job. So he applied this thinking, and he said that so their organization, they were able to use computers, they were able to form all their supporters, get communications, whereas the groups kind of fighting this had very few resources. So one of the groups that I studied as part of my PhD was called the Gays of Ottawa, and they were enormously successful in 71 to 95. And I was trying to figure out why they were so successful. They had a proto-computer, they had a printer, a dog-making printer. They had these technical aspects that Sackler also had. So just that you can find out with these groups, these little simple things. How did you pull this off? Oh, we had a printer that made labels. So we could print 10,000 labels, whereas you had to write your labels. So you can see how quite simple, practical things will enable one group to be massively successful. So they were kind of very busy, and very successful. Now Fertizi, he was a real operator. He was very ambitious. He wanted a future seat as a provincial judge. They designated the 3 provincial Supreme judges for the area. One of them had to be bilingual. And an opening appeared. One of the judges retired. Fertizi wanted that job. So he was very concerned that this French language stuff the province was doing would keep him from getting that job. He was also concerned about his children, them not getting jobs in government, because as many of us know, in a one-industry town, I see this in Ottawa, government jobs are very solid, deeply solid. And so they're good benefits and they're very stable, so you want those jobs. So Fertizi had this goal of being a judge. He was concerned about his kid's future, but because of the antics he pulled in the city, the Liberal Party made sure you're never being a judge. And I think he was eventually barred from office for 2 years because of antics he did about his golden parachute when he left office. So he made all these claims about what it would cost the city, but it was all nonsense. It was all nonsense. And outside the city, the national newspapers were positioning this as part of this kind of larger debate within the city. It was just for Francophones what this felt like. It wasn't about the big, anxiety of the larger country. It was just like, geez, what is this like? So when the resolution was passed, it was passed quite quickly, and the group called CALM that came together. They argued the resolution had passed appropriately, it was an appropriate notice. It happened, I think, on a Friday night, like nobody was there. It was a Monday night, but they didn't know what was happening, and I think Yvonne or someone was at home, found how everyone kind of raced over to the council. And when they finally had the kind of meeting about the aftermath, It was quite nasty. And there was someone there who spoke about surviving Hitler and escaping the war. And, you know, so he sort of said, I know what this is like. If we see, he said, why don't you go back to Europe? And if you look at the remember W5? It's still on. You look at the W5 videotape of that meeting in particular. How do I say this? It's all white-haired old people, people of a certain age. Like there's a real generational thing. Fratisi was very effective in mobilizing the Italian community, that their culture, their language was under threat. You know, if you're a group that kind of has the pie, and somebody wants a slice of the pie, you're going to feel very threatened by that. You don't want to give up any of the pie. And so he was very able to mobilize these forces. So in many ways, he's, you know, a version of the kinds of things we're seeing right now going on in the world. We have Pierre Poilievre is doing exactly the same thing, and it's really quite effective. So the people we interviewed, they felt quite hurt. It divided families. There was kind of some generational divides about what one generation wanted, what the next one wanted. But they really felt, you know, deeply manipulated. That Fratisi was just a real operator, and that he was more the puppet than the puppet master. I think one of the newspapers branded him and the council as all Neanderthals. I think there's a political cartoon. But as we know now, Neanderthals are extremely intelligent. And, you know, it's like, you know, don't insult Neanderthals that easily, they're pretty smart. But the Sioux was kind of one of several places this happened. So over 30 Ontario municipalities would go on to pass very similar resolutions. But basically, you know, making the obvious just obvious even more that the working language of council was English, and the resolution just reinstated that for no good reason except to stir up votes. So Fratisi goes on to win by landslide. The council passes it unanimously. And I think, does he win again after that? I can't remember. And it was just nasty. It was very nasty. But it was, yeah. So a very local eruption, driven largely by outside forces, but also by quite particular local issues around education and parents, and immersion education, and local school boards feeling stressed about the resources that they have, like we still have things to do. So you have a kind of local issue that's then, you know, drives a certain discussion that is then kind of exacerbated and used for by other forces to get a kind of larger context. And again, we see these kinds of things all the time. Probably the best account is the best management job called a guy named Sims, which I think is called Joe Fratisi, the best management job. It's all just about it. There are many copies. I have one. But that's probably the best account. The other one is a good discussion of the pro and anti-bilingual forces in the country by a guy named Hayday called They Want Us to Learn French. Historical account of the pro and anti-bilingual force in Canada, but the resolution isn't even mentioned. And that's not to diminish your or our experience, but, you know, in the larger scheme of that period in the province, we were kind of just a little blip on the radar, but locally it was very big blip on the radar. It's very unpleasant. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm very sorry.
So to sum up a lot of the the external factors, you had the Lethbridge court that was going on, so that was one of the factors. You had the Ontario law, the Law 21, that was going to force the issue of providing bilingual services in certain circumstances. Sault Ste. Marie did not qualify at the time. You had APEC and SAPER that were kind of stirring things around. You had the Francophone community that was in conflict at the time because there was a particular group. you talked about French immersion in the French language schools. There were a lot of people who were using the French language schools at the time for French immersion classes for their children. And what it was doing, it was watering down the French for the people from the Francophone families.
Yep.
So that caused a rift within the Francophone community. And I say Francophone community with a large, kind of large meaning to it, because the Anglophones who had children in the Francophone community were not actually part of that community, but became part of the Francophone community by virtue of the fact that their children were in the French language schools. So yeah, all of that was playing together, and there was a group that wanted to separate the French language children from the ones who were benefiting of the French immersion, but there was a divide because there was also those families in there who had a Francophone parent and an Anglophone parent who were caught in the middle of that, and whose children, if the children didn't speak French when they came to school, which many of them didn't, their children were not going to be allowed in the French language school either. And under provincial law, if those children had a parent, not both parents, a parent who had gone to a French language school, their children had the right to a French language school. And there was a group who wanted to say, no, French only. If they don't speak French when they come to school, they're not allowed in our school. Under the law, they couldn't do that. So yeah, it caused a whole controversy within the French community. And then SAFA just sort of, they took all of these things that were happening, Bill 21, like Meacher Court and all the discussion around that, and then the problems within the community, they just put it all together, and it was a perfect recipe for the perfect story. There was a lot that went into the mix. Yeah.
But what happened though, when the resolution was passed, all the Francophones forgot all their little problems and got together. And we were, started working together. And we walked on City Hall for just about a year. Everybody, whether you were.
Every council meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Every council meeting for a year. And my daughter, who's now 42 years old, she was 7 at the time, she still talks about that. She still remembers those walks because we were there. Every council meeting.
Oh, my.
You don't want to do that.
I don't think there's a.
We took the front steps up. So
So we go right to your office.
Yeah, and for TZ, so the group Calm, they kept trying to meet with them and he kept avoiding them. But one of the major mineral companies, Strathcona Minerals, they wrote the city and said, we will no longer be doing business with any resident in your city, so long as such a bigoted legislation is in effect. Yeah. So there were businesses that were hard to call. But for TZ, he took things very personally. He had delivered a letter that he wrote on city letterhead. I think it was one of the members of the COM had kind of really been critical of him, and he wrote this quite nasty letter that he dropped off into the guy's mailbox. And it's like, do you want to think about that? You're the mayor. Just use city letterhead with our former logo. Oh, thank you for drawing such attention to me with your blah, blah, blah. So he could really personalize things, and he did. But it had no real effect. I mean, it means you can do an economic or population study of what happened, because, so for my own university, people are going to move here. They want to go to schools, and is there a mosque, is there this, is there that? Are these the various things around? What's the environment? Like when I first got the job, my colleagues at Carleton University, where I did my PhD, were like, oh, Northern Town, Northern Ontario, it's going to be really homophobic. It's like every place is homophobic. Like, come on, it's going to be no more or less. I mean, the problem, I was teaching 400 students in a class. If one of them doesn't like gays, I won't even know. They said, well, in a smaller class, I said, because we have these assumptions about smaller communities, like every place is racist, every place is homophobic, every place has these things going on. And that's just part of the fabric of things, and I found it nowhere to be, to be no more lesser true than anywhere else.
How long have you been here?
I came here in 2011, but it was interesting though, but we talked about how much the community of cities changed. Because when I had my interview, so I was at the Station Mall, and I'd never been here, I'd been here as a kid. And I was standing at Station Mall, and I come from Ottawa, incredibly diverse Ottawa. I'm standing at Station Mall, food court, and I'm going, okay. So there's an Asian woman at the Asian block, a couple Asian Anishinaabe people. There are no brown people anywhere. There's no woman in the, there's no woman in the,
No problem.
no racialized people.
Oh yeah, when I came in 87, I knew was no black person on the
It was,
street.
it
And
was,
I grew up with black activities, so I got the soldier that was black
Oh, yeah.
in Montreal. And then he was
it
nobody
was
black.
shocking compared to Ottawa. I was like,
Yeah.
but the university itself, plan itself, and the college itself were much more diverse communities. But now, so more than 10 years later, with the plan, with immigration, with the university and the college, it's astonishing how much more diverse the student actually is.
Yes.
Which for industries and for education institutions to recruit people to bring here, that's a big plus. But the community really weathered the storm, and eventually it's got rid of, an apology is made. But it's one of those things that people don't forget, that you did this, you did this. And so when there is a further eruption of an erosion of people's rights, it brings up the memories again. It's like, oh, will it be our turn again? Are we going to get done? You know, particularly when there are economic pressures on how much a city can provide. So, yeah. Interesting.
Interesting.
Very good.
The way I lived, what happened was I went to Notre Dame. Then I went to Lakeway for a year, but then I transferred to the North. Then I went to university. And this all happened while I was in university. So I wasn't there on a regular basis to follow everything that was going on. And when I come back though, I did go to a few of those walks. And I remember we had pictures in our photo albums, family photo albums of us carrying the Canadian flag, and our cousin Louise is there.
Oh, yes.
You know, and what I want to do is I want to thank the people who were here on a regular basis while I was having fun in university to sort of keep things going and alive, and because it's so important, you know.
Yes.
But what I forget your name.
Mike.
What Mike just said though is I hadn't realized it before, but it's true. Mr. Futisi might have given us a favor. Because yes, it was difficult for the people who were here at the time while I was gone, but it did liven things up a bit, and it did bring us closer together, and it forced us to be proud. It wasn't just how we say in French, our acquis. You know, it forced us to be proud and made us realize, like, we don't have to justify being French in our own country, you know. But I left for many years and I went to Quebec. Now I'm back, and what I realized is that, yeah, there's no more Saint Ignace, and there's a lot less French schools. There's one huge one with Notre Dame. There's more immersion schools in the small farm. And what I'm trying to say is that in Sault Ste. Marie, I find it difficult to live the French community, but as soon as you leave, you go to Wawa, you go to Sudbury, you go to Elliott Lake, you go to the little French communities that are just not that far away, and there's a lot of French. Some people don't even speak English very well.
Yeah.
You know, so how do we all get together? Maybe it's this thing where we're all in clusters, but if we become a larger group and show our pride and our love for each other's culture, maybe it would help bring us together and have more of a sense of belonging.
Yes, for sure.
Well, in many ways, it's adversity will drive a community coming together. Like, you know, beyond the fact that I'm attracted to men, what do I have in common with one of the other gay men? Politically, you know, I'm left and feminist and all this, but they're right-wing case. But when you are attacked because of what you are, so that will bring a community together, but it also means is that, so what, you know, the lesbian gay rights movement was really growing since the late 60s and going along. And then the HIV pandemic, well, there's a kind of right-wing backlash to that and to feminism, but so then the HIV pandemic both decimates the community, but also brings it to a level of organizing that made everything that came next possible. But as a group accrues rights and becomes successful, the very things that brings that together as a group, that kind of dissipates. So, so there used to be, you know, lots of lesbian and gay bookstores. There used to be lots of women's bookstores. But as all that, you know, women's literature, lesbian, gay literature goes mainstream, you don't need those bookstores. So many things that you come to community around, your bookstore, your coffee house, your gay bar, your Francophone tavern, as your culture goes mainstream, the very things that bring you together community are undermined and your sense of community actually dissipates. So there's something to be said for diversity in terms of bringing you together.